Today's phrase of the day is, you can always sleep in your car, but you can't drive your house to work. On the podcast today, we're privileged and honored to have Ed Whitacre. Ed Whitacre was a fraternity brother of mine, a very close friend at Texas Tech, and we've stayed in touch ever since. He graduated in 1964 from Texas Tech with a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering. And Ed was born in Ennis, Texas, the home of the Ennis Lions. And Ed, we're glad to have you here. And were you an Ennis Lion?
I was an Ennis Lion, Kent, many years ago. I sure was.
And you played what sports?
Played a little football, a little basketball, more baseball. I've put the shot putted on the track team.
That's good.
Yeah.
And you had one of your coaches, Don Sykes, his grandson went on to play football at Texas Tech, Davis Webb.
Well, I remember Don Sykes. He was the baseball coach. He was a good guy. He was, I think, in his first year of coaching at Ennis when I played for him. But I remember him as a good guy.
Let me talk to you a little about your family, your parents and what your dad did, and your mom, any brothers or sisters.
My dad worked for the Southern Pacific Railroad. He was an engineer, as most of the people in Ennis worked for the Southern Pacific Railroad or the Cotton Tag Company. And he was, my mother was a housewife. And I was a late child. I'm the oldest, but my dad was near 40 when I was born. So, little town of 4,000 or 5,000 people, but it was home, good place to be. Everybody worked for the railroad.
And you had a great childhood. Any teachers that had an impact on you that you remember in high school or even grade school?
There was a guy named Frank Blair that taught mathematics, and he had been a high school football coach, an assistant. I don't think he was ever head coach. But I was inspired by him. And after I got out of college, I went by to see him in Royce City, Texas, and he's sitting on the front porch. And I got to tell him, you made me go to college, probably, Frank. He was a good guy.
That's great.
I remember him fondly.
When you got out of high school at Ennis, then you went to University of Texas, Arlington.
Yes, for 1 year.
And why did you go there for the first year?
Because I didn't know what I wanted to do and couldn't afford to go anywhere else, and I could commute back and forth. And actually, I didn't have a car. My dad or mother would take me on Sunday night and come back and pick me up Friday.
You lived in a dorm?
Davis Hall, room 104.
That's good. Good memory. Good recall. And then you transferred to Texas Tech.
I did.
And what made you decide on Texas Tech?
Decided I wanted to be an engineer. I knew a few people out there. I wanted to get away from Ennis, and that was as far as I could go and still afford the tuition. And so, I knew a few people, could afford it, and so I went.
You came out, you were active, you pledged Delta Tau Delta. We were both Delts together. You pledged a year before I did.
I did.
And
but I remember you. I said, look at that goofy kid. He pledged.
You probably said, how did he get through? Who in the hell let him in?
No, I liked you from the start.
Well, it's been mutual. What did, were there any guys that you remember very much that were close to you in the fraternity, or a lot of them? Or
yeah, I remember quite a few of the guys. Clark Edgecombe and I roomed together. He's an architect in Houston.
Yeah.
Or still is. Tom Green and I were fraternity brothers. He's retired here in San Antonio. So, yeah, I remember some. And good memories, some not so good.
I understand that. You graduated in 1964. While you were in college, let's talk a little about your jobs you had. You had a job driving an ambulance.
I had a lot of different jobs.
How long did that job of driving an ambulance last?
I think that was about a year. It was a place to stay. It paid a little money. It was just a job.
And then you went to work for cleaners.
Yeah, Gristy Cleaners.
They're still there, still in love.
Gristy's is still there. And if you need your suit cleaned, I could do that today.
That's good. You were actually cleaning clothes.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember putting naphtha in a big washing machine and, just like a normal washing machine, sit there and whirl, and then you'd let them dry out, and then you'd press them and clean them and iron them. And I remember all that pretty well. I remember the smell more than anything. A naphtha doesn't smell real good.
No.
And I remember the people that worked in there. They were really nice people.
When did you go to work for the phone company?
The summer before my senior year. And I worked the summer in Dallas. And I sort of begged them to give me a job so I could finish my senior year. I wasn't exactly a rich guy. And they gave me the job of lineman in Lubbock. And so I worked my senior year part-time for Southwestern Bell in Lubbock.
How did you get in with Southwestern Bell to get a job to start with?
I applied for the summer job in Dallas and begged. Frank Whitten was the man's name, and he said, "We don't have any openings." He said, "We've already filled them all." I said, "Well, you don't understand, Frank. I really need this job. I got to have this job." And I guess I luckily impressed him enough that I got a job. We stayed lifelong friends. He was a good guy. But I went home, and he called me in Ennis the next day and said, "We found an opening." So I lucked out. But
so your senior year, you were an assistant lineman.
Which meant that I got to do sort of all the grunt jobs, go out and measure distances between pole lines and, drive stakes in the ground to put this pole here or put that cable there, that sort of stuff. But it was a great job, and it let me get through school.
When you got to be CEO of SBC, was he still working for the company?
No, he'd retired at the time, but he was, we had stayed in touch, and he was really a nice, wonderful guy.
He had to be real proud that he hired the eventual CEO.
I'm not sure he could believe it, but.
Then when you got out, you went with them full time?
I did.
And what was your position when you got out? Once you had your degree and, you moved above being a lineman.
Well, they had Southwestern Bell at the time had a management training program for recent college graduates, and myself and 10 or 15 guys got accepted in this program. And it was called the JET program, or Junior Executive Training Program. And I was in that, and we visited different departments in the company for about, a year, like accounting, outside, marketing, commercial, that sort of thing. So we did that for a year, and then we got assigned, and my first job was a repair foreman in East Dallas.
So you were in charge, how many people?
I probably had 15 people.
And so anyone there was a problem with the phone line or something, y'all got the call.
Anybody that called repair service, we got the call.
Now, some of these people that are working there, you had a college degree, you had an engineering degree, but some of them were just actual workers, and
they carried me pretty high.
They were good.
Yeah, they were good, and they made fun of me and kidded with me, but we all got to be close friends, and I stayed up with all of them for many years.
Yeah.
They were good guys.
What was the next job that you got?
I was the wire chief in Greenville, I think. And that meant I had all aspects of the outside plant, telephone plant, utilities poles in Greenville, Texas.
And did you move to Greenville, or you lived in the same place?
Yeah, Linda and I moved. Robin Hood Lane apartments. It was all full, had to wait 4 months to get in the apartment. So I lived in the Holiday Inn for 4 months.
Oh, that doesn't sound like fun.
No, it wasn't fun.
Let's talk about Linda. A beautiful lady, nice lady, and you met her at Texas Tech.
I did.
And where was she from?
Fort Worth. Or she'd say Fort Worth, but I say Fort Worth.
You make it 2 words. She makes it one.
She makes it one
which
word.
proves she's from there. I've always said I meet somebody every once in a while, and I'll ask them where they're from, and they'll say Snangelo. And if they say San Angelo, I know they're not.
Right.
But if it's one word, Snangelo,
Yeah.
then I know they're actually from
Well,
there.
she's a Fort Worth gal.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And a blind date, or how'd you meet her?
One of my fraternity brothers had a sister there who knew this girl that needed a ride home and had a late final. And this girl lived in Fort Worth, and to get to Ennis, you had to go through Fort Worth. And so I was asked to go by, and would I take her by Fort Worth? Because she didn't have any rides and had a late final. So I went and picked her up, and it was Linda. And we got married a couple of years later. It was a fortunate time.
It really was.
Yeah.
She's great. How old were you when you went to New York?
Probably 30.
And so you were there, and an opening came up in Arkansas. Tell me about that.
There was an opening for the next level of management. It was called fourth level or division level at the time. And I was asked if I would go and take this job in Little Rock, Arkansas. Well, when the guy tells you you're our second choice, our first choice won't move to Arkansas.
Yeah.
That doesn't make you feel good.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's an opportunity for you. I said, I'll be there tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Well, it was 2 days later, but I took the job.
Billy Tubbs was the basketball coach at Lamar, and he got the job at Oklahoma. And they said, Billy, John Thompson at Georgetown was offered this job, and he turned it down. What do you think about being second choice? And he had his family there and everything. And he said, I was my wife's second choice, and it's lasted 35 years. You had mentioned to me before that you and Linda always agreed at the very onset of your marriage that if you got a chance to get a promotion, you were going to take it. You weren't going to fall in love with some town.
Exactly.
And
we lived in a lot of different towns.
And I think that's smart for anyone that's in corporate and wants to be an executive, that, they might fall in love with town, but they can love some other town too.
Yeah. You got to be willing to move.
Yeah.
Which I always viewed as a challenge and fun, not drudgery.
What would you say to a young person that went to work for a large company that they want to get to be an executive someday and maybe even a CEO someday? What did you do to look at doing your job so well that they'd want to promote you?
Well, that's a pretty hard question for me to answer, but I always worked hard, tried to get along, tried to learn something, and, tried to find out how people behaved and what made them act, and try to just manage your way through that.
Yeah.
A lot of common sense, I think.
Very important in dealing with people.
Yeah.
Very important.
The name of the game is people. If you don't do that, forget it. It doesn't work.
And how long were you CEO of Southwestern Bell before you changed the name, and also you moved the company?
I was CEO 17 years.
Okay. And that you moved the company to Texas from St. Louis, the headquarters.
Yes.
What year?
That was 1992, I guess. We moved from St. Louis to San Antonio. And there were good reasons for that.
One, Texas didn't have an income tax, so in effect, you could give everyone a pay raise.
And we'd just bought the Mexican telephone company, and this was close. Texas had most of the growth, and so it was.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the buying of the Mexican telephone company. The Mexican government made a decision to get out of the phone business. The government was running the phone business.
Yes.
And so they made a decision to get out, and you could go in and bid and buy it. And did y'all have the best bid, and how did you get that? Did you?
Well, they were privatized. The Mexican government was privatizing several businesses, the phone company being one. We assumed you had to have a Mexican business partner. And so Carlos Slim and I got together, became good friends, still are, still talk, still a close friend. But we decided that we would use his company and Southwestern Bell to bid to win the Mexican telephone company. And we had the high bid and won.
Carlos Slim has consistently, over the last 30 years, been listed as one of the 10 richest in the world, and there's been some years he's been number one.
Yeah.
And I met him at your house. Fascinating guy, and also he's he's a big friend of yours. But he gave Texas Tech $2 million in your name for scholarships.
I was very nice of him. I've always been appreciative, but he's a good friend and stays a good friend, and so does his family, and we talk, and he's a wonderful businessman.
Yeah, a very good businessman.
Very good.
So you bought the Mexican phone company,
right?
And what was your vision, or what did you think you could do with that company?
Well, we had the expertise. They had the reputation, the Mexican company, reputation of being slow on service, not very good on repair, not expanding, but just sitting in a sort of a bureaucracy stuck in the mud. And I thought we had the expertise to fix all that, bring the phone system into the modern world and give them good service and grow the business for the benefit of the share owners of SBC. And so we did, and it worked.
It really worked.
It really worked.
Yeah, I mean, that was a home run.
Yeah,
that was one of the best purchases anyone's ever done.
It was a good one.
Outside of the company and outside of the country.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were wondering, is this, what's going to happen on this? And but it's that's a pretty big bet.
It worked out good, though. It was a big bet. It was a huge bet at the time, but we stepped out there and did it, and luckily we did.
Why do you think you were able to do it so well and as easily as possible? I knew there were difficulties along the way as in anything, but that thing went extremely. I followed it all the time on the market, and that really went well. What was the key? Was it your people? Was it the?
It was the people, and it's always the people and that sort of thing. We had some great leaders, some good managers. We stepped up and sent our best down there. They knew what to do, and we gave them the firepower and the resources to do it, and it worked out really good.
Yeah. And then the next time you made a purchase, and all the bells have been broken up, was SBC the smallest?
Yes.
So they were the smallest, and it was Southwestern Bell. You changed the name to SBC.
Yes.
Was there a reason for that, or?
Well, Southwestern Bell implied a certain part of the country, the southwest part of the U.S. And I envisioned, as did some of my managers, we didn't want to be in the Southwest only. We wanted to be
everywhere.
And so we changed the name to SBC.
But what year did you finally buy cement that you were able to put AT&T back together?
I guess we did that about 2010, something like that.
So the government broke up AT&T.
Yeah.
Broke it up like Humpty Dumpty.
Right.
And you came along and put it all back together again.
Not all, but a great deal of it. AT&T was the next to the last one we bought.
But they were small by then.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. We got a good deal on AT&T, I thought.
You always had a reputation in the industry, not just phone industry, but in business, that when you were going to do a deal, you'd get to a point and say, that's it.
That's right.
That's the best we can do.
Yeah, that's true.
And you walked away from some.
We walked away from some, but we got some done, too.
Yeah, you got a lot of them done.
And we had flexibility. I mean, when we bought AT&T Wireless, Vodafone was bidding on it. Vodafone's headquartered in Europe. And it came down to the chairman of AT&T Wireless called me and said, well, we're going to award this. We're going to sell to Vodafone. I said, how much more? He wouldn't tell me, of course. That was private. And I said, okay, we'll bid this. He said, we'll take it. And so he called the Vodafone chairman, who was mid-Atlantic, going back to tell his board that they had bought AT&T Wireless. He called him and said, no, you've been outbid by AT&T, and we won it.
That's good.
That was a hair-raising night. Stayed up all night.
Yeah, because
he had to call the board of directors at 3 a.m. and say, I need another nickel. another nickel a share. Got their approval, made them the offer, and they took it.
How much was a nickel a share?
It was a lot of money. It was a lot of money.
They had,
but it turned out to be a great buy.
Oh, it was a great buy.
A great buy.
You know, I mean, y'all were ahead of your time on that.
That's right.
But you know, it's always been said in business, certain things, he who hesitates is lost. You didn't hesitate on that.
No.
You knew it had to move.
It had to go. Yeah. It was beachfront property. There's only so much, you know. Yeah. And when it's gone, and you can't get it back. So you have to take some risk, and that takes some gut checks, I'll tell you for sure. But in the final analysis, if you're not willing to take a risk, you're not going to make it.
What was the best deal you ever did?
Probably Amdocs in terms of return to the shareholders. Mexico was really good.
Amdocs, that's where you put in a few million and got billions back.
Right.
That was a home run.
That was a good one.
But when I talked to those people about giving the Ed...
It took years.
It did. But when I talked to them about giving the Ed Whitacre scholarship, they went, yes, sir, we want to do that. I mean, they were willing.
Well, we were their biggest customer. They're really good, smart people. We made a lot of good buys. We made some that weren't so good, you know. But thing is, we became a nationwide company instead of the smallest. It's a scale business to a large extent, and we expanded the scale, and some others didn't do so well.
Yeah.
We wanted to be first, foremost, and the biggest, and kind of our objective, be the biggest, best telecommunications company. That's pretty easy to understand, too.
It is. When did you envision that you might be able to get AT&T and put it all back under their name?
I had sort of wanted AT&T for a long time, and the chairman at the time really didn't want to talk about it, and they had a management change, but I kept thinking AT&T, they were kind of on the outs, long distance had gone down, but I kept looking at the network they had. And they had the world's best network all over the world. You could connect anybody with AT&T. And even though their stock was not doing well, I kept seeing that network in my mind, and I had grown up in the business. I knew what was there. I said, we really need this. And we got it for not a whole lot of money.
Did most of the times when you did deals, was it pretty clear cut? The entire board went with you?
No.
Did you have some where they pushed back?
Oh, yeah. When I suggested we buy AT&T, not one of my management reports thought we ought to do that.
They were all negative.
All negative.
It worked out.
Well, they thought we should try to buy Bell South first. Yeah. Bell South was the last thing we acquired. And I said, well, sorry you'll feel that way, but we're going to buy it anyway. Go get it done, Jim Conn.
Then when you went to the board, did you tell the board that the rest of the management
No, I didn't tell the board that. I said, you can judge for yourself, but here's what I highly recommend. And for these reasons.
Did they jump on it?
Board always was unanimous, and it was a good board.
Who all did you have on the board that really stands out in your mind with?
Oh, we had a lot of great board members. We had August Bush from Anheuser-Busch and Chuck from Emerson and Carlos from Mexico and 2 or 3 really smart women from California and Laura Tyson, from Berkeley. And
right.
We had some really good ones. But they would always be supportive if you gave them the information of what you wanted to do.
And Jim Ellis, he was
best.
He was the best I ever dealt with. And,
no question about it.
He knew what he was doing. He knew you.
He was a managerial lawyer.
He was air traffic controller.
He was.
Because a company that size, you're going to have thousands and tens of thousands of lawsuits and lawyers and all things. And he had to figure out what was important and when he had to do it.
Yep.
He's
the world's best lawyer.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But in fact, he lives 2 blocks from me, and I see him quite often.
Tell him I said hello.
I will do that.
Tell him I said he better sign up for the podcast. Now, when you got AT&T back and you merged, I mean, they were the smaller company and took the name and everything. Then you started your overseas operations.
Well, we had a few along, but we had some, yeah.
Yeah. And that was the first time that, I mean, you were truly a multinational.
Yes, we were.
And being in the number of countries that you were in.
Yeah.
And when you did that, did you have to travel much to meet the leaders of other countries?
Yes, I did travel quite a bit. I went to South Africa and met President Mandela.
Wow, what was that like?
That was awesome. That's what that was.
What kind of guy was he?
He was a guy that was most impressive, very down to earth, calm, smart, a really good people person who had an understanding of economics and what his country needed, and very good to deal with. So, yeah, I met with him. We acquired the South African telephone company. Some years later, he wanted us to sell it back to some of the leaders in their country, which we did. But yeah, I've been around and went to Belgium a few times. We owned Belgacom. We owned several companies over there. Not our greatest investments, but certainly not our worst either. And it gave us good international experience.
AT&T's had a great name throughout the world, and so it's easy to understand why you went with that instead of SBC. Yeah. And you got into the cellular business, got into cell phones. You were one of the first, and you met Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. I mean, that's fascinating to me that you met a guy like that. And tell me how he sold y'all on y'all's deal and how you sold him.
Well, we got to give Stan Sigmund a lot of credit in this, who was one of my top managers at AT&T. And the cell phone business was clicking along. You remember the flip phones and big phones that came in briefcases. But Steve Jobs had this phone that was smaller and had some features. And so Stan and he met in New York, and Steve Jobs had this phone in his pocket and pulled it out and said, "This will do what a flip phone will do, but it also has these applications." And there weren't many applications in those days, but there were applications. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, Stan came back to me and said, "It's big bucks, and we may have to bet more than we want to bet." And it was big bucks. It was really big. It was as close as we ever came to betting the company financially. But we looked at each other and talked it over. And first of all, we had the network. Steve Jobs had the phone. People tend to think the phone's the end. The phone doesn't work without a network. And it's a very complex, big network. One, we had the network. Two is we had the people that knew how to run it. Three is a personal communications device that if his vision of what it could do would work, this would be big. Fourth is we were willing to almost bet the company because he wanted a lot of money for each one of these little phones. And we, as I remember, it would take us a year just to get our bait back on each phone. So it was very expensive. But I thought we had the management team to do it. I thought that if a personal communication device, people would really go for it. And I said, "Well, what do you think we ought to do, Stan?" He said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, I think we ought to buy it. I think we ought to do it. We can get a 5-year exclusive with Steve Jobs," and the iPhone was born. And you know where the iPhone is today.
Right. The Stan Sigmund, by the way, was from Hereford, Texas.
That's right.
20 miles from where I grew up in Dimmitt, Texas. And he graduated from West Texas State.
That's right.
And then he was running your cellular business in Atlanta when I met him.
That's right.
Great guy. Great guy.
Terrific guy.
And but you always, it seemed like everyone I met, like Jim Ellis, your general counsel, was a great guy. And
tried to hire just great people.
Well,
not only great guys, but great ladies too.
Yeah.
We did a lot of that.
Y'all were out on the cutting edge in hiring women. And I was trying to think of the lady that went to Texas A&M that you hired that worked for you in San Antonio.
Well, there were lots. There was Cassandra Carr, who
was president of the Texas division,
and Karen Jennings was president of Missouri. We had lots of males and females, all very good.
Y'all were out there on the cutting edge, though, in hiring women and promoting them to management positions.
And not only that, but on the board of directors too. We had right out there on the cutting edge.
With the cellular phones and everything, y'all made a bet and it was huge.
It was a huge bet for us.
But Steve Jobs, did you meet with him personally?
No.
Stan did.
I had a telephone conversation or two with him,
but you bought that concept on the iPhone without seeing one.
Yeah, but it was a personal communications device, and I thought if this worked, this will take over the world. And it did work. It was small, but I said, this is worth taking a gamble on. And so we made the big gamble, got a 5-year exclusive, spent a ton of money, but it was turned out to be a really good thing for AT&T shareholders.
Well, it was a great thing for y'all, but it's also for Apple.
It worked out good for Apple.
Yeah, everybody hit a home run. Also, I met, and some people gave some scholarships to your name, from Israel, a company that you had over there.
Right.
And what was the name of that company?
Well, that company, we own several companies over there. And you would ask me that, and I'm having a senior moment.
Was it Amdocs?
Amdocs.
Amdocs. Yeah.
Yes. And we got close to Amdocs, and they were a software company. First time we'd really ventured off into software. But they did software for telephone companies and Yellow Pages books. And we got to be good friends with them. They knew what they were doing. They were really smart people, most impressive. And so we got involved with Amdocs and took part ownership of the company, and probably the best investment we ever made.
Yeah, y'all didn't put I don't know if you're at liberty to say, but you put a X dollars in.
Let's say we put a few million in and got a few billion back.
Yeah.
It was a good one.
And the guys in Israel, they loved you.
They loved it. Now, Morris Kahn was the CEO. He's now retired and living in Israel, and comes to New York quite often. We still talk, and he's a very good friend. All of them, we got to be very close friends, but it was a great investment for AT&T.
Ed, during that period of time, you went on boards of other companies.
Yes.
I know you're on the board. You were on the board at Exxon.
Yes, I was on the Exxon board, and
I introduced Ed at a fraternity gathering one time, and I said he served on the board of Anheuser-Busch, and I said, for those of you boys that don't understand, they make Budweiser. That's a beer, and they all laughed.
I learned a lot from those board positions, which was the reason to do it. I was gratified they wanted me, but you also learn a lot doing that.
But you had the Anheuser-Busch and
the May Company, which later became Macy's. I believe it became Macy's after I retired. So,
and then you were on the board of the railroad. Which one?
Burlington Northern Santa Fe.
Burlington Northern Santa Fe.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, your dad had passed away by then.
Right.
You know, but I think he would have been thrilled.
He would have liked it.
Oh yeah, that his son.
He would have liked that.
Was on the board of a
railroad.
Railroad.
Yeah.
That's where that all worked. One of the persons, you know, you mentioned your parents had a big impact on your life, was your granddad.
Well, I had two great-grandfathers, let me put it that way. One lived in Hearne, Texas, and was a blacksmith, and the other one lived in Ennis and was a retired railroad engineer from Oklahoma. And so really, I have to give them both credit. My blacksmith grandfather was also a judge in Hearne, Texas. And he'd been a judge for many, many years. And in his last election, there was one vote against him. And Hearne's not a big town, but it's, you know, several hundred people voted, and there was one vote against him. So he was quite a guy.
He probably had to fine that guy, found him guilty or something, had to fine him. That's the reason he voted against him.
Well, I have a lot of fond memories of people coming to the house at night wanting to get married, or the Department of Public Safety wanting to take him to an inquest out at an accident site. I have a lot of memories of that.
Did you spend summers down there a lot, or just?
I never stayed any length of time, but yes, we visited quite often.
Yeah. And on the board, you said that, being on the board, you find out about all kinds of other businesses.
Yeah. You get to observe other managers too, and what works, what doesn't work, how they interact with people. And that was always the most interesting to me, is study of people.
Right.
People's what it's all about.
I want to ask you one other thing. You set me up a meeting to visit with John Stanky.
Yeah.
The new CEO and chairman of the board of AT&T, who is an impressive guy.
Yes.
And I talked to him about my podcast. He put me in touch with some people at CNN, and that's really working well. When did you meet John Stanky, and what is his positions as he goes up? Tell me about John Stanky.
John Stanky was an upper mid-level manager in Pacific when we bought Pacific Bell. And he's one of the few that we kept. The rest of them chose to retire or didn't want to stay. But John stayed, and we moved John to San Antonio, and, got to know each other over the years. He's a very bright, technical guy. He's learned well. He's a good leader. I've known John for 20 years, more than that.
Right.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
And did you see early on that you thought he had potential?
He's one of those that my intuition told me, this guy might have it.
Yeah, he could go to the top.
And, a CEO's biggest job, picking the people that are going to replace him, trying to find the right people.
Yeah.
That's really your number one job.
Yeah.
These people that say, well, nobody can replace me are just stupid, really.
Yeah.
You get down to it. There's a lot of people more capable than all of us.
I'd say, 99% of the institutions, I'm talking about business, government, higher education, public education, there'll be somebody and they'll quit or they'll die in an accident or something. Somebody said, well, there's no way they can be replaced. Well, in certain ways, that's true. But look, did the institution go down? And the answer is usually no.
No. Absolutely.
And so the right people, and it may make some changes in the institution.
The whole world changes all the time.
Yeah.
Got to stay flexible, boy.
Y'all stayed flexible.
Very
If you had just stayed in the fixed phone business, I don't know. I know very few people that have a phone
now. Wouldn't exist.
Yeah, you'd have gone down. But you look at a lot of companies like Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was a hot stock, and everybody wanted it. And their R&D, and they didn't stay on top, and they weren't. And then all of a sudden, they were gone before they realized it.
That's right. It's too late when they finally realized it.
Eastman Kodak. Same
a lot of examples.
That
Lots of examples.
That would be a Fortune 500 or Fortune 50 company.
You got to keep moving, boy.
And you have always done that.
Yeah.
You have always done that.
Thought it was more fun that way. It's exciting for the people.
It is.
It's exciting.
You didn't retire until 2007?
2006.
6.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd been at the helm 17, 18 years?
17 years.
17 years.
Yeah, I was 66 years old when I retired.
Yeah, that's pretty early retirement.